Hello class, this is Dr. Branch. Now we are going to discuss divorce and remarriage. We've already established what a marriage is and God's plan for marriage. Now we are going to address the very sensitive issue of divorce and remarriage. As we address this issue, in a class our size, I am working under the assumption that most likely someone in the class has been divorced or perhaps even remarried after divorce, so I realize this subject is very sensitive. I'm sure some of you have parents that were divorced, a brother or a sister who was divorced, a parent, a grandparent, someone very close to you. It may even be that someone in the class is considering divorce right now. Well, I'm hoping this lecture will be very helpful. I do realize the sensitive nature of divorce. It's going to take me 2 or 3 videos to get this down. I'm trying to keep these videos at a short length, less than 20 minutes, preferably around 15 minutes each, just so they're more consumable portions and not some long 2-hour video. That would be really quite interminable. Also hard to load on YouTube. So let's begin our discussion of divorce and remarriage. I have an illustration from a song. I realize country music may not be your preferred genre, but 50 years ago, one of the most popular country music singers in America, if not the most popular, was Tammy Wynette. If you've ever heard the song Stand By Your Man, that was Tammy Wynette. And she released a song in 1968 called D-I-V-O-R-C-E, and the song is all about a husband and a wife spelling out the word divorce so that their small child can't understand what they are saying. And it's interesting because this song came out in 1968. It was 1 year later that no-fault divorce became legal in California in 1969. Soon thereafter, most states in the United States followed. And she herself was married 5 times. But that song coming out at that time reflects a significant, a major societal shift that occurred at that time. All of this occurring during the sexual revolution. Don't miss what was happening in this era. In 1960, the oral contraceptive pill comes on the scene. 1966, Harry Benjamin publishes his book on transgenderism, which is seminal in all the arguments for accepting transgenderism. 1967, the Summer of Love. 1968, this song, D-I-V-O-R-C-E. 1969, no-fault divorce becomes legal in California. 1973, the Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton cases and legalization of abortion. Late 1973, the American Psychiatric Association changes its stance on homosexuality. Great many things going on in a very condensed period of time. It was a major societal shift, and we are still dealing with the reverberations from all this. And this is one aspect. We're dealing with one aspect today. So I'm going to repeat some things I said last week, but with more about data on marriage. But what I'm focusing on today is about divorce in particular. There's a legal definition, just so you'll know what no-fault divorce means. It is a divorce in which neither spouse is required to prove fault or marital misconduct on the part of the other spouse. Prior to 1969 in the United States, someone had to prove that there was a reason why they were seeking a divorce. There was some cause. My spouse is abusive or drunk or a gambler or sexually unfaithful. You had to demonstrate cause. Well, no-fault divorce is where we get this phrase, irreconcilable differences. We just can't get along. So are there a irremediable breakdown of the marriage? Well, you've heard the data about divorce. Let me give you some idea. First of all, let's review something we said last week, that the percentage of the U.S. population that is married has declined precipitously. And now, this data is from 2011, and it's changed since then, but gives you an idea. We now live in a day and age when less than half of adults of marriageable age are actually married. So fewer people are married than are single. This gives you an idea of how these trends have shifted. This is from the Pew Research Center. This went up to 2010. It's gone down since then. Just showing you in a graph how fewer and fewer people are getting married or staying married once they are married. People are waiting until later to get married. We talked about that. last week, the median age of first marriage has gone up significantly. If you'll remember, I talked about Lisa and I being married at age 20 and how few of you at the class, I think we were the youngest people in the class to get married at that age. So what percentage of marriages end in divorce? Getting precise data on divorces in the United States is notoriously difficult because we don't keep a national registry. These things are kept on a state-by-state basis. And getting an accurate picture of the data is notoriously difficult. There's lots of debate. So, first of all, the common claim is that half of all marriages end in divorce. I chose 3 years at random from the state of Missouri. These years aren't important. But if you just glance at the data from Missouri, you can see why someone might claim that half of all marriages end in divorce. You see that you have around 40 to 47,000 over here and 20 to 22,000 in any divorces in any given year over here on this side. So if you just glance at that data, you can see why the common claim, half of all marriages end in divorce, is compelling to many people. And what that means to a lot of young people or people who have never been married is they think that marriage is almost just like a coin toss. It's a 50-50 chance. Will we make it or won't we? We just don't know. Well, this is an inaccurate way to read the data. The data is actually skewed by people with multiple divorces. For example, we don't know how many of these divorces over here are the second, third, fourth, or fifth divorce. We don't know how many of these marriages over here are the second, third, or fourth, or fifth marriage. So what seems to emerge from the data when you look at lots of different sources, and I won't bore you with the detail, is that about here in the United States right now, about 2/3 of the people who get married actually stay married until death do they part. So I'm just driving home the fact that there are more divorced people than there used to be, that even though divorce has increased, the majority of people who get married actually stay married until the death of one or both of the spouses. So I want to talk to you about some data regarding Christians. There was a major study that came out in 2014. I'm going to refer to it here in a moment. But it has been the source for a lot of secular claims that divorce is actually more common among religious conservatives. Secular people throw this charge at people like us because we spend all this time talking about marriage. We have ministries like Focus on the Family. That's supposed to be our point of emphasis, and yet they are claiming religiously conservative people have higher divorce rates than people with no religious affiliation, so they're making an attack on our religious faith. Yes, here's the article. The Journal of Sociology, two guys, demographers, Jennifer Glass at the University of Texas and Philip Levchuk at the University of Iowa. This study still gets a lot of play, and it strongly asserts that personal, individual religious conservatism is positively related to individual divorce risk. And they arrive at this data by looking at county-level divorce statistics, and then they measure these counties, their religious adherence in these counties. And now, when they say religious adherence, they could refer to Roman Catholics or Southern Baptists or Latter-day Saints. They were indiscriminate in that. So they're just talking about people who are religious adherents in any one county. So why do they think this was so? This is not what their data says. They are giving you their interpretation of their data. And these talking points, based on which they get from their data, have been compelling to lots of people. So let me share them with you. First of all, they're going to say there's an earlier age of first marriage. I talked about Lisa and I getting married at age 20. If you remember in the last one of the earlier lectures, I said, well, how old should you be? I said, well, at the minimum age, I threw out the age 18. I think that's pretty safe. Well, they say that our emphasis on young marriage is strongly tied to our insistence that sex is designed for marriage. Thus, born-again kids feel a pressure to marry and avoid the stigma of premarital sex, or at least religiously conservative kids do so. Then, because we get married younger, we have children at earlier ages. When we have children at earlier ages, it makes it hard for us to finish college. We have lower educational attainment. Because we have lower educational attainment, we don't earn as much money and in an economy that favors a college education. I want to stress their data doesn't say any of these things. These are their inferences, and if you read these talking points very carefully, what it tells you more about what Glass and Levchuk think about religious conservatives than about religious conservatives themselves. Notice the stereotypes that emerge. Well, you people are hung up on sex. You get married so young. Oh, you have so many children. Oh, you're all uneducated and you're all poor. Do you see the stereotypes of religious conservatives that emerge here? This tells me that they don't really know a lot of religious conservatives quite personally, is my suspicion. I don't know how much time they've actually spent around evangelical churches. Nonetheless, that's what they claim. So what I will tell you is the divorce data between Christians and non-believers seems to be very similar. This is old data from Barna. What you get, though, is that on a year-in and year-out basis, people with some sort of religious background, particularly people who claim to be evangelical at some level, the divorce data looks about the same for evangelicals as it does for secular people. This is what I'm showing you here is a trend that proves true year in and year out. The states with the highest divorce rates typically are from the Bible Belt here in the United States. Look at this. This is a random year, 2009. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Alaska. I guess we can attribute that to those long winters. Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee. Oh, I've got another year. It's 2017 again. Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. These are all Bible Belt sort of states. And so what we know is that religiously conservative states typically top out at the higher end of divorce data. We know that's true here in the United States. And here's a diagram just showing you that. So part of the challenge, though, is how do you define someone's religious conviction? And so the data is very contrasting when you compare an active person, a person who actively practices his or her Christian faith versus someone who is a nominal Christian. And if you define an active Christian, someone who goes to church on a regular basis, a family that prays together or reads the Bible regularly, versus people who claim to be Christian but don't ever go to church, don't read their Bible, and might show up every Christmas and Easter. We all know about that. Here's what Brad Wilcox at the University of Virginia claims. He says Americans who attend religious services several times a month were 35% less likely to divorce than those with no religious affiliation, and I think that's right. The same research found a nominal conservative Protestants were 20% more likely to divorce than the religiously unaffiliated. When you look at all this data, if you take the data from the earlier research study which we talked about from these guys over here, Levchuk and Glass, when you take their data, when you look at this data about the different states who typically top out in the top 10, when you look at what Wilcox is saying from the University of Virginia, here's what I would tell you. There is something incredibly dangerous to a marriage about being a nominal Christian. Here's people make interpretations of data. Here's my interpretation of the data and why I think being a nominal Christian strongly increases the risk of divorce. Because if someone is only nominally religious and nominally committed to the Christian faith, they've got just enough Jesus, just enough God language or Bible language to bring God in to justify anything they want to do. God wants me to be happy. God desires my best, and my best is to dump my wife and run off with this other woman, or to leave my husband because he's not meeting my needs and we're just not on the same page and I want more out of life than he does. You can justify all sorts of things if you're not really into the Word and not really living by God's rules, but you have enough God language to justify these things. It's a wicked, wicked combination. I would go so far as to suggest about the most dangerous thing you can do to your marriage is be nominally faithful to your walk with Christ. Divorce also leads to the feminization of poverty. This is a major problem here in the United States. We're all concerned about poverty. Wow, right now as the virus is spreading and we're trying to control things, folks working at food service industry, wow, it's a real challenge for them. As you know, many people that serve you at a table are ladies. Of course, a lot of men do as well. But the feminization of poverty is a major issue. Why is this? Well, first of all, because of no-fault divorce, men can divorce for any reason, and they can just leave their wife and get a divorce and say, I want out. The women usually get the children, not always. There are always exceptions, which means they are going to have more expenses. Then the men frequently fail to pay child support. This is a common problem. And then the women and the children usually have to move to a different home. So the children not only see their mother and father split up, they have to move out of a house. That's a disruption in their life. When they do that, they frequently have to change school districts. That's another disruption in their life. And then typically the wife's net income substantially drops. All this ties to the feminization of poverty here in the United States. Oh, here's all sorts of data about the poverty by family type from 1995. I'm just showing you that over time this proves to be true. 1995, what they're showing is female-headed households 25 years ago were the most common type of poor family. This continues to be true. This is data up through 2011. It's just showing you the same thing, that single mother families, oh, go away, sorry about that, guys, that single mother families are the most common type of poor family. Look at this. Here's another way of looking at the data. Children born into a marriage that stays intact have a 6.3% chance of living in poverty. Only 6.3%. On the other hand, children born out of wedlock and the mother is never married, 56.7%. But look at this. Born in wedlock but a subsequent divorce. Look at the jump from kids who are raised in a stable home where mom and dad stay together as opposed to those who get divorced. Look at the jump in the number of kids who live in poverty. By the way, just another piece of data from the Pew Research Center. A never married woman wants a spouse with a steady job. So, gentlemen, you may not be the most handsome guy on the face of planet Earth, but if the Lord has given you a work ethic, you're well on your way of finding the love of your life. I would suggest to you get a job. Here's what one parent said to their child: never mind what Susie's mother said. Two-parent families are not a cult. Well, to keep this into a bite-sized piece, we'll stop here. Let me give you a summary. About 60 to 66% of people who get married in the U.S. actually stay married until death do they part. That data goes up and down on a yearly basis. There's a stark difference in divorce data for Christians actively practicing their faith as opposed to nominal Christians. And higher divorce rates are correlated with poverty and less education, and divorce is associated with the feminization of poverty. Okay, that's a good stopping place for here.